The thunder rolled across the Missouri prairie, as Willow Vaughan clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders, one hand instinctively moving to protect the slight swell of her belly. At 19 years old, she now found herself alone on the muddy road leading away from Clifton Hill, the only home she had ever known, banished by the very family that should have protected her in her time of greatest need. Rain began to fall, fat drops that quickly turned the dusty path to mud, clinging to the hem of her dress as she trudged forward. The last words of her father, Elder Thomas Vaughan of the Sacred Light Congregation, still rang in her ears. "No daughter of mine would bring such shame upon our household. You are dead to us until you repent of your wickedness." Her mother had wept silently in the corner, not daring to contradict her husband, while her younger sisters were forbidden even to say goodbye. Only her small bundle of possessions and the child growing inside her remained as proof that she had ever been Willow Vaughan, dutiful daughter of the town's most respected religious leader. The year was 1876, and unmarried mothers were considered little better than common harlots. It mattered not that Henry Porter had promised to marry her before riding off to seek his fortune, swearing to return within a month. 3 months had passed without word, and now her condition could no longer be hidden beneath loose dresses and strategic shawls. The rain came harder now, and Willow's legs trembled with each step. She had no plan beyond reaching the next town, though what she would do there, she couldn't say. With only $12 to her name and no family to vouch for her character, her prospects were grim indeed. A crack of lightning illuminated the road ahead, and in that brief flash, she saw the outline of a rider approaching. Fear seized her heart. A woman alone on a deserted road was vulnerable to all manner of danger. She stepped off the path, seeking shelter behind a large oak tree, praying the traveler would pass by without notice. The horse's hooves slowed, then stopped entirely. "Hello," called a deep voice. "Is someone there?" Willow remained silent, heart pounding, praying that the stranger would move on. "I can see you behind that tree, miss," the voice continued, gentler now. "I mean no harm. It's fixing to storm something fierce, and no one should be out in this weather." Another flash of lightning revealed a tall man atop a magnificent chestnut stallion. His hat was pulled low against the rain, but she could make out the silhouette of broad shoulders and the glint of a badge on his chest. "I'm the sheriff from Silveridge, just up the road," he explained, as if reading her thoughts. "Zachary Novak's the name. You look like you could use some assistance." Willow hesitated, weighing her limited options. Stay hidden and risk sickness from exposure, or trust this stranger who at least had the legitimacy of a badge. "I'm fine, sir," she called back, her voice betraying her exhaustion. "Just seeking shelter from the rain." Sheriff Novak dismounted, leading his horse closer but stopping at a respectful distance. "Begging your pardon, miss, but you don't look fine. You're shivering, soaked through, and unless I'm mistaken, you're carrying precious cargo there." His eyes briefly flicked to her midsection before politely returning to her face. Willow's hand moved protectively to her belly again. "That's not your concern, Sheriff." "Maybe not," he conceded, "but I took an oath to protect all folks in this county, born and unborn alike. My sister-in-law runs a boarding house in Silveridge. Clean, respectable place. I'd be happy to escort you there." Thunder boomed directly overhead, making Willow jump. As if the heavens themselves were making the decision for her, the skies opened up completely, turning the light rain into a deluge. "Please, miss," the sheriff said, extending a hand. "I give you my word as an officer of the law, and as a Christian man, that no harm will come to you under my protection." Something in his steady gaze convinced her. Or perhaps it was simply that she had nowhere else to go. With trembling fingers, she reached out and accepted his outstretched hand. "Willow Vaughan," she said softly. "Miss Vaughan," he acknowledged with a respectful nod. "Let's get you out of this weather." He helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her, keeping a proper distance between their bodies while still offering the stability she needed. He draped his duster around her shoulders, the leather still warm from his body. "It's about 3 miles to town," he explained as they set off at a gentle pace. "My sister-in-law, Mrs. Eleanor Finch, is a widow who took over her late husband's boarding house. She's got a kind heart and doesn't ask too many questions." "I can't pay much," Willow admitted. "I have only $12 to my name." "Let's not worry about that tonight," Sheriff Novak replied. "First order of business is getting you warm and dry." They rode in silence for a while, the rhythmic motion of the horse nearly lulling Willow to sleep despite her precarious position. She noticed the sheriff was careful to maintain propriety, holding the reins in a way that created a barrier between them. "May I ask where you were headed?" he finally asked. Willow hesitated. "Anywhere that wasn't Clifton Hill." "Ah," he said, understanding in his voice. "Small towns can have long memories and harsh judgments." "My father is Elder Thomas Vaughan of the Sacred Light Congregation," she explained, surprised at her willingness to share this with a stranger. "When he discovered my condition, I was given an hour to pack my belongings and leave." The sheriff was quiet for a moment. "I'm familiar with Elder Vaughan's reputation. The Sacred Light folks are known for their strict ways. They believe in purity above all else," Willow said softly, "and I have fallen short of their standards." "With respect, Miss Vaughan, I've found that many who preach the loudest about purity often forget about mercy," Sheriff Novak replied. "My own reading of the good book suggests God cares more about love than judgment." The lights of Silveridge came into view, a welcome sight through the curtain of rain. Unlike Clifton Hill, which was little more than a church, a general store, and a cluster of homes, Silveridge boasted a proper main street with several businesses, including a saloon that still showed lights despite the late hour. The sheriff guided his horse to a 2-story building with a sign reading Finch Boarding House. A lantern burned in the downstairs window, casting a warm glow onto the wet street. "Eleanor always keeps a light burning for travelers," he explained as he helped Willow dismount. Her legs nearly buckled beneath her, and he steadied her with a gentle hand on her elbow. He escorted her to the front door and knocked. Moments later, it opened to reveal a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and hair tucked neatly under a nightcap. "Zach, what on earth are you doing out in this weather?" Her eyes moved to Willow, taking in her bedraggled appearance and the slight swell of her abdomen. To her credit, her expression remained unchanged. "And who might this be, Eleanor? This is Miss Willow Vaughan. She's in need of lodging." "Miss Vaughan, my sister-in-law, Mrs. Eleanor Finch." Eleanor opened the door wider. "Come in, child, before you catch your death. Zach, stable your horse and then come in for some coffee. You're both soaked to the bone." The interior of the boarding house was simple but immaculately clean. A fire burned in the hearth, and the smell of fresh baked bread lingered in the air. Eleanor led Willow to a chair near the fire. "Let's get you out of those wet things," she said, her tone practical rather than judgmental. "I've got a nightgown and robe that should fit you well enough until your clothes can dry." While Eleanor fussed over her, Sheriff Novak excused himself to tend to his horse. By the time he returned, Willow was dressed in borrowed clothes, wrapped in a quilt, and sipping hot tea with honey. "You'll stay the night, Zach," Eleanor declared rather than asked. "I've already made up the room at the end of the hall." "Much obliged," he replied, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. In the light of the fire, Willow could see him clearly for the first time. Sheriff Zachary Novak was perhaps 30 years old, with intelligent blue eyes set in a weathered face that spoke of years under the western sun. His dark hair was damp from the rain, and a day's growth of beard shadowed his jaw. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense of her former beau Henry, but there was something compelling about his steady gaze and quiet confidence. Eleanor brought him coffee, then turned to Willow. "Now, my dear, I've prepared the small room at the top of the stairs for you. It's not much, but it's clean and private." "I can only stay one night," Willow began. "I haven't much money. We'll discuss arrangements in the morning," Eleanor interrupted gently. "For now, you need rest." Sheriff Novak cleared his throat. "Miss Vaughan comes from Clifton Hill. Her father is Elder Vaughan." Recognition dawned in Eleanor's eyes. "I see." She patted Willow's hand. "Well, you're among friends now. The Lord works in mysterious ways, bringing you to our door on this stormy night." Willow felt tears welling in her eyes at this simple kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. "Off to bed with you now," Eleanor said. "Things always look brighter in the morning." Upstairs in the small but comfortable room, Willow laid a hand on her stomach. "We'll be all right," she whispered to her unborn child, though she had no idea how she would make that promise come true. For tonight, at least, they were safe and warm. Morning brought clear skies and the cheerful sounds of a town coming to life. Willow woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until the events of the previous night came rushing back. Her clothes, now clean and pressed, were folded neatly on a chair near the bed. Dressing quickly, she made her way downstairs to find Eleanor in the kitchen preparing breakfast for several boarders who sat around a large oak table. Sheriff Novak was among them, now clean-shaven and dressed in a fresh shirt. "Ah, Miss Vaughan," he greeted her with a warm smile. "I trust you slept well." "Better than I expected, thank you," she replied, accepting the cup of coffee Eleanor offered. "Sit and have some breakfast," Eleanor urged. "Zach tells me you've had a difficult journey." Willow took a seat at the table, acutely aware of the curious glances from the other boarders, two older men who appeared to be traveling salesmen, and a severe-looking woman, who Willow later learned was the town schoolteacher. After breakfast, when the other boarders had departed for their daily business, Sheriff Novak asked Willow to join him on the front porch. The morning air was fresh after the night's storm, and birds sang in the maple tree that shaded the boarding house. "Miss Vaughan," he began, "I hope you won't think me forward, but I've given some thought to your situation." Willow steeled herself, expecting yet another judgment. "Our town is growing, and we're in need of help at various establishments. Eleanor could use an assistant at the boarding house, and Doc Peterson's wife is looking for someone to help mind their children while she assists at the clinic." "You're offering me employment?" Willow asked, surprised. "I'm offering you options," he corrected gently. "Silverage isn't perfect, but we're a tolerant community. Your personal circumstances needn't define your entire future." "My condition will soon be obvious to everyone," Willow pointed out. "Most respectable establishments won't hire a woman in my situation." The sheriff looked directly at her. "Miss Vaughan, I've found that God doesn't cast out love, even when it comes in unexpected packages. A child is a blessing, regardless of the circumstances of its coming." His words, spoken with such quiet conviction, brought tears to her eyes. "My father would say I've sinned grievously." "Perhaps," Sheriff Novak acknowledged, "but having been acquainted with Elder Vaughan at county meetings, I sometimes wonder if he's forgotten that Jesus spent more time with sinners than saints." A smile tugged at Willow's lips despite her tears. "That's dangerously close to blasphemy, Sheriff." "Just an observation from a simple lawman," he replied with a twinkle in his eye. "Now, would you like to meet Mrs. Peterson? She has 3 young ones under the age of 6 and could use a helping hand. The position comes with room and board at their house. Willow considered his offer. It was far more than she had dared hope for when she left Clifton Hill. Yes, she decided. I would like that very much. Later that day, Sheriff Novak escorted Willow to the Peterson home, a comfortable 2-story house near the doctor's office. Sarah Peterson was a bustling, cheerful woman in her 30s, who seemed more concerned with whether Willow could handle her rambunctious children than with her delicate condition. "The babies due when?" she asked practically, after inviting Willow to sit in her sunny kitchen. "Late winter, madam." "January, I believe." "Well, that gives us plenty of time to get you settled and trained up with the children. You'll have your own room off the kitchen, small but private. I'll expect you to help with the children and some light housework while I'm assisting my husband at his practice." She glanced at Willow's midsection. "As your time approaches, we'll adjust your duties accordingly." Willow could scarcely believe her good fortune. "That's very generous of you, Mrs. Peterson. Call me Sarah, please, and it's not generosity, it's practicality. Good help is hard to find in these parts, and anyone Zach vouches for is good enough for me." She shot the sheriff a knowing look that Willow couldn't quite interpret. Sheriff Novak tipped his hat. "I'll leave you ladies to work out the details. Miss Vaughan, I'll have your belongings sent over from Aliner's." "Thank you, Sheriff," Willow said, infusing the simple words with all the gratitude she felt. "For everything." He nodded, his blue eyes holding hers for a moment longer than necessary before he departed. True to Sarah's word, Willow's duties at the Peterson household were manageable, even as her pregnancy progressed. She cared for young Michael, Emma, and baby Rebecca, read them stories, and helped with simple meals when Sarah was busy at the clinic. Dr. Peterson was a kind, distracted man who treated Willow with the same absent-minded courtesy he showed everyone. October turned to November, and Willow's belly grew more pronounced. Sarah insisted on sewing her several loose-fitting dresses appropriate for her condition, waving away Willow's protests about the expense. "Nonsense," Sarah said as she pinned a pattern. "I've been blessed with easy pregnancies and healthy children. The least I can do is help another mother in need." Sheriff Novak became a regular visitor to the Peterson home, often stopping by after his evening rounds to inquire after Willow's health. His visits were brief and proper, but Willow found herself looking forward to them more than she cared to admit. One crisp November evening, as she sat on the porch shelling peas while the children played in the yard, Sheriff Novak arrived with a small package tucked under his arm. "Evening, Miss Vaughan," he greeted her, removing his hat. "You're looking well." "Thank you, Sheriff," she replied, setting aside her task. At 5 months along, her pregnancy was unmistakable now, but the loose dresses Sarah had made preserved her dignity. "I brought something for you," he said, extending the package. "Just a small token." Willow unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a beautiful hand-carved wooden cradle, small enough to sit beside a bed. "Sheriff Novak," she gasped, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "This is too much." "Zach, please," he corrected gently. "And it's not too much. I enjoy woodworking in my spare time. Keeps my hands busy." Willow blinked back tears. "It's beautiful. Zach." His name felt intimate on her lips, crossing a boundary that had stood between them these past months. He sat beside her on the porch step, a respectable distance away but close enough that she could smell the clean scent of soap and leather that always accompanied him. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her rounded belly. Willow hesitated, then nodded. No one had touched her pregnancy with anything but clinical interest since she'd arrived in Silveridge. Zach placed a large, calloused hand on her stomach, his touch gentle. As if on cue, the baby kicked against his palm. His face broke into a delighted smile. "Strong little one you've got there," he said, withdrawing his hand reluctantly. "Yes," Willow agreed, suddenly feeling awkward. This man who had shown her nothing but kindness was looking at her with an expression she dared not interpret. "Willow," he began, using her given name for the first time. "I know your heart may belong to the father of your child." "It doesn't," she interrupted, surprising herself with her vehemence. "Henry Porter made me promises he never intended to keep. He's likely halfway to California by now, if not farther." Zach's expression darkened. "If I ever cross paths with this Henry Porter, he'll have some explaining to do." The fierce protectiveness in his voice warmed something inside Willow that had been cold since the day her father cast her out. "That's not necessary," she said softly. "I've made my peace with his abandonment. My child and I will manage without him." "You shouldn't have to manage alone," Zach said. He took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "I've developed feelings for you, Willow. Feelings that go beyond concern for your welfare." Willow stared at him, scarcely believing what she was hearing. "But I'm carrying another man's child," he finished for her. "I'm well aware. It changes nothing about how I feel." "The town would talk," she protested weakly. "Let them," he said with a shrug. "I'm not asking for your hand, not yet. That would be presumptuous. I'm merely asking permission to court you properly, with the possibility of something more permanent in the future." Willow's heart raced. She had noticed her growing attraction to the kind sheriff, but had dismissed it as gratitude or the vulnerability of her situation. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say you'll consider it," he suggested. "Say you'll allow me to call on you formally with the Petersons' blessing. We can take our time, get to know one another better." Willow thought of her father, of how he would condemn this as merely compounding her sin. Then she thought of Zach's words on that first night. "God doesn't cast out love." "Yes," she said finally. "I would like that very much." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "You've made me a happy man, Willow Vaughan." He rose to his feet. "I should let you finish your chores before Mrs. Peterson starts wondering what's keeping you." As he turned to leave, Willow called after him. "Zach, thank you for the cradle. It's the most thoughtful gift I've ever received." He tipped his hat with a smile and departed, his stride noticeably lighter than when he'd arrived. True to his word, Sheriff Novak began to court Willow with old-fashioned propriety. He called at the Peterson home every Sunday afternoon, sometimes taking her for gentle walks around town, other times simply sitting with her on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. He brought small gifts, a ribbon for her hair, candied almonds from the general store, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy. As December arrived with its frosty mornings and early sunsets, Willow found herself falling deeply in love with Zachary Novak. He was everything Henry Porter had not been: steady, honest, and utterly reliable. Where Henry had been full of grand promises and ambitious dreams, Zach was content with his life in Silveridge, taking pride in maintaining peace in their growing community. Christmas approached, and with it came a letter addressed to Willow in her mother's familiar handwriting. She opened it with trembling hands in the privacy of her room off the Petersons' kitchen. "My dearest Willow," her mother wrote, "I pray this letter finds you in good health. Your father does not know I am writing to you, and it must remain our secret. I have thought of you every day since you left, and my heart breaks anew each morning when I rise and remember you are not here. I want you to know that I tried to intercede on your behalf, but your father's mind was set. He believes the harshness of his judgment will lead you to repentance. I do not share his certainty. I have enclosed what money I could save from my household allowance. It isn't much, but perhaps it will help you and my grandchild. Please know that whatever your father says, you are not forgotten or unloved by me. I cannot ask where you are, for if your father questioned me, I could not lie. But know that you remain in my prayers, and I hope someday there may be reconciliation between you and your father. With all my love, Mother. Folded inside the letter were 5 $1 bills, a small fortune from her mother's careful saving. Willow wept, both for the kindness of her mother's secret defiance and for the stubborn pride of her father that kept them separated. When she showed the letter to Zach during his next visit, his expression softened with compassion. Your mother sounds like a good woman caught in a difficult position. She is, Willow agreed. She's always been gentle-hearted, though father says it's her greatest weakness. I'd call it her greatest strength, Zach countered. It takes more courage to love than to judge. The next day, Christmas Eve, brought an unexpected snowfall that blanketed Silveridge in white. The Petersons invited Zach to join them for dinner, and he arrived bearing gifts for everyone: carved wooden animals for the children, a fine set of hairpins for Sarah, a new pipe for the doctor, and for Willow, a silver locket on a delicate chain. "Open it," he urged as they sat by the fire after the children had been put to bed. Inside was a tiny scrap of paper with a Bible verse written in Zach's neat handwriting. "Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." "It's perfect," Willow said, clutching it to her heart. Later, as Zach prepared to leave, he asked her to step onto the porch with him for a moment. The night was cold but still, snowflakes drifting lazily in the light of the moon. "I have another gift for you," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. "One I didn't want to give you in front of the others." He produced a small box wrapped in silver paper. Willow opened it to find a simple gold band nestled on a bed of cotton. "Zachary," she breathed, looking up at him in shock. He took her hands in his. "I know it's soon, and I know your situation is complicated, but I love you, Willow Vaughan. I love your kind heart, your quiet strength, and your unwavering faith despite all you've endured. I would be honored if you would consent to be my wife." Willow felt tears freezing on her cheeks in the cold air. "But the baby will be my child in every way that matters," he finished firmly. "I will love him or her as my own, I swear it. People will talk," she protested weakly. "Let them," he said with a smile. "I've never much cared for gossip anyway." Willow looked at the man before her, this good, honorable man who was offering her everything she had thought lost forever. A home, a family, a place in the community, and most of all, love without conditions. "Yes," she said, her heart so full it felt it might burst. "Yes, I will marry you, Zachary Novak." He lifted her gently into his arms, mindful of her condition, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her knees weak. When he finally set her back on her feet, they were both breathless. "When?" she asked, practical concerns asserting themselves even through her joy. "As soon as possible," he replied. "New Year's Day, if Pastor Wilson is agreeable. That gives us a week to prepare." "But my condition will be obvious to everyone," he acknowledged. "And I don't care. Let people think what they will. We know the truth, and that's all that matters." And so, on New Year's Day 1877, Willow Vaughan became Mrs. Zachary Novak in a simple ceremony at Silveridge's small church. Sarah Peterson stood as her witness, and Dr. Peterson stood for Zach. Eleanor Finch prepared a wedding breakfast at the boarding house, and the entire town turned out to wish them well. There were a few raised eyebrows at the bride's advanced state of pregnancy, but as the sheriff was universally respected, no one dared voice disapproval openly. Besides, as Eleanor pointed out pragmatically to anyone who would listen, the good Lord himself was raised by a man who wasn't his natural father, and no one thinks the less of Joseph for it. Zach had prepared a cozy house on the edge of town, nothing grand, but solidly built and welcoming. He carried Willow over the threshold despite her protests about her weight, setting her gently in a rocking chair before the fireplace. "Welcome home, Mrs. Novak," he said, his eyes shining with love. Their first weeks as husband and wife established a comfortable routine. Zach performed his duties as sheriff during the day while Willow prepared their home for the baby's arrival. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, talking about their days or simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. Willow discovered that Zach was a man of unexpected depths. He had been educated back east before coming west after the war, and his bookshelves contained volumes of poetry, history, and philosophy, alongside practical manuals on law enforcement and agriculture. He read aloud to her each night, his deep voice bringing the words to life as she worked on knitting tiny garments for the baby. January brought bitter cold and heavy snow that kept most townsfolk indoors. In the final weeks of her pregnancy, Willow found movement increasingly difficult, but Zach was endlessly patient, helping her with tasks that had become challenging and massaging her swollen feet each evening. "You're too good to me," she murmured one night as his strong hands worked out the aches in her lower back. "Nonsense," he replied. "This is what husbands do." "Not all husbands," she countered, thinking of the marriages she had observed in Clifton Hill, where wives were expected to serve without complaint and husbands rarely acknowledged their efforts. "Well, this husband does," Zach said firmly. "You're carrying a child, Willow. The least I can do is make you comfortable." On a bitterly cold night in late January, Willow woke to a sharp pain that took her breath away. Zach was instantly alert beside her. "Is it time?" he asked, already reaching for his clothes. Willow nodded, unable to speak as another contraction gripped her. Zach dressed quickly and stoked the fire before helping her into a sitting position. "I'll fetch Dr. Peterson," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Will you be all right for a few minutes?" "Yes," she managed, "but hurry." The hours that followed were a blur of pain and exhaustion. Dr. Peterson arrived with Sarah, who took charge of the situation with the competence of a woman who had assisted at dozens of births. Zach was banished to the kitchen to boil water and prepare clean linens, though he returned frequently to check on Willow's progress. As dawn broke over the snow-covered landscape, Willow's labor intensified. "I can't," she gasped after a particularly brutal contraction. "I can't do this." "You can and you will," Sarah said firmly, wiping Willow's brow with a cool cloth. "Women have been doing this since Eve, and you're stronger than most." Zach appeared in the doorway, his face pale with concern. "Is there anything I can do?" Dr. Peterson shook his head. "Best stay out, Sheriff." "This is women's work now," but Willow reached for him. "Stay," she pleaded. "I need you." The doctor hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, but stay at her head out of our way." Zach took Willow's hand, his steady presence giving her strength as the final stage of labor began. When the urge to push became overwhelming, he supported her shoulders, murmuring encouragement in her ear. "You're the bravest woman I know," he told her. "You can do this, just a little more." With a final, tremendous effort, Willow pushed her child into the world. A lusty cry filled the room, and Dr. Peterson's face broke into a smile. "You have a son," he announced, placing the squalling infant on Willow's chest. "A fine, healthy boy." Willow stared down at the red, wrinkled face of her son, overwhelmed by a love so powerful it took her breath away. "He's perfect," she whispered. She looked up at Zach, suddenly anxious. Would he look at this child irrefutable evidence of her past with resentment or regret? But Zach's eyes were filled with wonder as he gently touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "He is perfect," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like his mother." Later, after mother and baby had been cleaned and made comfortable, and the Petersons had departed with promises to return in the morning, Zach sat on the edge of the bed, watching as his wife nursed their son. "Have you thought about what you'd like to name him?" he asked. Willow hesitated. She had considered naming the child after her father, hoping it might soften his heart toward her someday. But that seemed wrong now, a tribute to a man who had turned his back on her when she needed him most. "I thought perhaps Thomas after my father," she admitted. "But now I'm not sure." Zach was quiet for a moment. "What about Matthew?" he suggested. "It means gift from God, because that's what he is, a gift, to both of us." Willow looked down at the infant, now sleeping peacefully at her breast. "Matthew Zachary Novak," she tried the name out. "It's perfect." The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and joyful discoveries as they adjusted to life with a newborn. Matthew proved to be a good-natured baby who slept well and nursed vigorously. Willow recovered quickly from the birth, and by March was able to resume most of her household duties while caring for her son. Zach was an attentive father who seemed to delight in every aspect of the baby's care, from changing soiled diapers to walking the floor with him when he was fussy. He often returned home from his duties with small gifts, a rattle carved from maple wood, a soft blanket from the general store, a tiny pair of moccasins made by a Pawnee woman who sometimes traded in town. Spring arrived with its promise of renewal, bringing wildflowers to the prairie and longer days that allowed for pleasant evening walks with the baby. The citizens of Silveridge had fully embraced Willow as their sheriff's wife, and if anyone remembered the circumstances of her arrival in town, they had the good grace not to mention it. On a particularly fine April day, Zach returned home early from his rounds, a troubled expression on his face. "What is it?" Willow asked, setting aside the shirt she was mending. "I had a visitor today," he said, hanging his hat on the peg by the door. "A young man asking questions about a woman who matches your description." Willow's heart stuttered in her chest. "Henry," Zach nodded grimly. "Says his name is Henry Porter. Claims he's been searching for you since last fall." "What did you tell him?" Willow asked, instinctively moving to where Matthew slept in his cradle. "I told him I'd make inquiries," Zach said, his voice carefully neutral. "I didn't confirm or deny that you were here. I thought you should decide how to handle this." Willow sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. "Why now? It's been nearly a year." Zach sat opposite her, taking her hands in his. According to him, he was delayed by illness, and then by work opportunities he couldn't pass up. He says he returned to Clifton Hill to find you gone, with no one willing to tell him where. He's been searching town by town ever since. "And now he's found me," Willow whispered. "Not yet," Zach corrected. "I haven't told him anything. But Willow, he's Matthew's father. He has certain rights." "Rights?" Willow's voice rose in anger. "What rights? He abandoned me when I needed him most. He left me to face my family's anger and judgment alone." "He wasn't there when Matthew was born." "I know," Zach soothed. "And I'm not defending him. But legally, if he's claiming paternity and wants to be part of Matthew's life." "No," Willow said firmly. "You are Matthew's father in every way that matters. We're legally married, and you're listed on his birth certificate. Henry Porter gave up any claim to my son when he left me to face disgrace alone." Zach squeezed her hands. "I agree with you, love, but I wanted you to know the situation before making any decisions. He's staying at the saloon and has asked to meet with me again tomorrow." Willow was silent for a long moment, thinking through her options. Part of her wanted to refuse to see Henry, to send him away with no acknowledgement. But another part, the part that still believed in justice and compassion, knew she couldn't do that. "I'll see him," she decided. "But not alone. You'll be with me and we'll meet him somewhere public." Zach nodded. "The cafe by the general store, perhaps? Eleanor can watch Matthew for an hour." "Yes," Willow agreed. "And Zach, Thank you for giving me the choice, for not making decisions about my life without consulting me." His expression softened. "We're partners, Willow, equals. I would never presume to make such decisions for you." The following day, Willow dressed with particular care, selecting her best dress and arranging her hair in a style more sophisticated than her usual practical bun. She wanted Henry Porter to see that she had not just survived without him, she had thrived. Alina arrived to care for Matthew, cooing over the baby and assuring Willow that all would be well in her absence. "Don't you worry about a thing," she said firmly. "This young man will get one look at you with Zach and realize he's missed his chance." Willow and Zach walked arm in arm to the cafe, where Henry was already waiting at a corner table. He rose when he saw them, his expression changing from hopeful to confused as he noted their linked arms and matching gold bands. Henry Porter was much as Willow remembered him, handsome in a boyish way, with curly brown hair and an engaging smile that had once made her heart race. Now, she looked at him and felt nothing but a dull ache for what might have been. "Willow," he said, stepping forward. "Thank God I found you." "I've been searching everywhere." Zach's hand tightened on hers. "Mr. Porter," he said evenly, "I believe you've met my wife." Henry's gaze darted between them, confusion giving way to understanding. "Wife, but when?" "We were married on New Year's Day," Willow replied, her voice steady. "Please sit down. I believe we have much to discuss." They took their seats, an awkward triangle of tension. The waitress brought coffee, sensing the delicate nature of the meeting and quickly retreating. "I don't understand," Henry said finally. "I came back for you, Willow." "I always intended to come back." After 10 months, Willow couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "After I was cast out by my family and left to fend for myself," Henry had the grace to look ashamed. "I was ill with fever for weeks, nearly died. By the time I recovered and earned enough for our start in life, you were gone. Your father wouldn't tell me where. My father cast me out when he learned I was carrying your child," Willow said bluntly. "I had 1 hour to pack my belongings and leave the only home I'd ever known." Henry paled. "A child, you were. We have a child. I have a son," Willow corrected. "His name is Matthew and he's 3 months old." "And I'm his father," Henry stated, a note of wonder in his voice. "Biologically, yes," Zach interjected, his tone civil but firm. "Legally and in every other way that matters, I am Matthew's father. My name is on his birth certificate and we are a family." Henry's expression hardened. "You had no right, no right," Willow interrupted, her voice low but intense. "You left me, Henry. You made promises you didn't keep. Sheriff Novak found me alone on the road in a thunderstorm, pregnant and desperate. He gave me shelter, helped me find honest work, and treated me with respect when others would have judged me. He asked for my hand knowing full well I carried another man's child, and he has loved Matthew from the moment he was born." "I would have done the same if I'd been here," Henry protested. "But you weren't here," Willow said simply. "Zach was." Henry looked between them, seeing the united front they presented. "I have rights," he said stubbornly. "He's my son." "The law is complicated in these matters," Zach said, his professional demeanor asserting itself. "But generally, a child born to a married woman is legally presumed to be her husband's child, regardless of biology." "We weren't married when he was conceived," Henry pointed out. "No, but we were married when he was born and named," Zach countered. "I claimed him as my own with Willow's full consent." Henry's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Can I at least see him? Just once?" Willow exchanged a glance with Zach, who gave a slight nod, leaving the decision to her. "Yes," she said finally. "You can see him. But Henry, you need to understand Matthew is my son, and Zach is his father. If you're looking to claim him or take him from us, I will fight you with everything I have." I wouldn't take him from you, Henry said, looking genuinely shocked at the suggestion. I want to know him. To be part of his life somehow. That's not possible, Willow said gently but firmly. We live here in Silveridge. Zach's position as sheriff is here. Our life is here. You've made it clear your ambitions lie elsewhere. Henry nodded slowly, accepting the truth of her words. I understand. But please, let me see him just once before I go. They arranged to meet at the Novak home that afternoon. Eleanor, sensing the delicacy of the situation, made herself scarce when they arrived, leaving Matthew asleep in his cradle. Henry approached the sleeping infant with trepidation, his expression softening as he looked down at the tiny face. He has your nose, he murmured to Willow. And my chin, I think. Willow stood beside Zach, drawing strength from his solid presence. He's a good baby, she said. Hardly ever cries without cause. Henry reached out a tentative finger to touch the baby's cheek but stopped just short of contact. I'm sorry, Willow, he said, his voice choked with emotion. I truly did intend to come back for you. I never meant to leave you alone through all of this. I know, Willow said, surprised to find she believed him. Henry had always been careless rather than cruel. But intentions aren't enough when a child's future is at stake. Henry straightened, composing himself with visible effort. You've built a good life here, he acknowledged. Better than anything I could have offered you, I think. Yes, Willow agreed simply. There was no point in pretending otherwise. I'll be moving on tomorrow, Henry said. Heading to San Francisco, there's work there for a man willing to put in the effort. I wish you well, Willow said sincerely. I hope you find what you're looking for. Henry glanced at Zach. Take care of them, he said, a request rather than a demand. With my life, Zach promised. After Henry had gone, Willow sat in the rocking chair, cradling Matthew to her chest. The baby had woken and nursed, now contentedly examining his mother's face with solemn eyes. Are you all right? Zach asked, kneeling beside her. Yes, Willow said, surprised to find it was true. I thought seeing him again would be more difficult, but it wasn't. What I felt for him seems like it happened to another person in another life. Zach took her free hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid he might stir old feelings in you. Willow shook her head. Henry was a boy's dream. You, Zachary Novak, are a woman's reality and far better than any dream I ever had. Summer arrived with its long, golden days and warm nights scented with prairie flowers. Matthew grew from a newborn to an active infant who charmed everyone he met with his ready smile and cheerful disposition. Willow settled into her role as the sheriff's wife with a confidence that surprised her, hosting dinners for town officials and organizing charitable efforts for less fortunate families. In July, another letter arrived from her mother, this one containing news that shook Willow to her core. Her father had suffered a stroke and was not expected to recover. He's asking for you, her mother wrote. His speech is affected, but your name is clear enough. I believe he regrets his harshness and wishes for reconciliation before he meets his maker. Please come if you can, and bring my grandchild that I might meet him at last. Willow showed the letter to Zach that evening after Matthew had been put to bed. I don't know what to do, she confessed. Part of me wants to go to him, but another part remembers how cruelly he cast me out. Zach considered her words carefully. What does your heart tell you? That I should go, Willow admitted. Not for his sake, but for mine, and for Matthew's. He should know his family, even if they once rejected me. Then we'll go, Zach decided. I can arrange for Deputy Miller to handle things here for a few days. The journey to Clifton Hill took a full day by stagecoach, with Matthew alternately fussing and sleeping in their arms. As they approached the small town where Willow had spent her entire life before her banishment, she felt a curious mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. Her mother was waiting at the door of the family home, her face lighting up at the sight of them. "Willow," she cried, embracing her daughter with tears streaming down her face, "and this must be my grandson. Oh," and she stopped, noticing Zach for the first time. "Mother, this is my husband, Sheriff Zachary Novak," Willow introduced him. "Zach, my mother, Martha Vaughan." Martha's eyes widened slightly, but to her credit, she recovered quickly. "Welcome to our home, Sheriff. I'm pleased to meet you, though I wish the circumstances were happier." Inside, the house was much as Willow remembered it, austere and immaculately clean, with few decorations beyond religious texts framed on the walls. Her younger sisters, Mary and Ruth, hovered in the background, clearly unsure how to greet the sister who had been forbidden to them for so long. "Girls, come say hello to your sister and meet your nephew," Martha urged, and they came forward shyly. Mary, now 16, hugged Willow tentatively. "We've missed you," she whispered. "Father forbade us to speak of you, but we prayed for you every night." Ruth, just 14, was more reserved but smiled when Matthew grabbed her finger in his tiny fist. "He's beautiful," she said softly. "Your father is resting now," Martha explained, leading them to the parlor. "The doctor says he's had moments of clarity, but they're becoming fewer. When he wakes, I'll tell him you're here." Over a simple meal, Willow told her family an edited version of her life since leaving Clifton Hill, emphasizing Zach's kindness and the warm welcome she had received in Silveridge. She said nothing of the desperate days on the road or the fear that had been her constant companion until Zach found her. "And you're happy?" her mother asked, searching Willow's face. "Very happy," Willow confirmed, reaching for Zach's hand under the table. "God had a plan for me after all, though it wasn't the one Father envisioned." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I'm glad. I've prayed every day that you would find peace, even as your father insisted you could only find it through repentance and return to the fold." A sound from upstairs interrupted their conversation, a bell ringing weakly. "That's your father," Martha explained, rising. "He must have woken. I'll go to him and tell him you're here. He may wish to see you alone first, Willow." Willow handed Matthew to Zach and followed her mother upstairs to the bedroom where she had spent countless hours as a child, reading Bible verses to her father as he prepared his sermons. Now, the powerful man who had dominated her youth lay shrunken against the pillows, his left side visibly weakened by his stroke. "Thomas," Martha said gently, "Willow is here as you asked." Elder Thomas Vaughan's eyes, once so fierce and judgmental, turned to his daughter with an expression she had rarely seen directed at her regret. "Willow," he said, his speech slurred but understandable. "My girl." "Father," she replied, moving to his bedside but not touching him yet. "I came as soon as I received Mother's letter." "Good," he managed. "Need forgiveness." Willow's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "You need my forgiveness," he nodded with effort. "Cast you out, sin, mine, pride." Martha slipped quietly from the room, leaving father and daughter alone for the first time since that terrible day when he had ordered Willow from his house and his life. Willow sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "I forgive you, Father," she said, surprised to find she meant it. "We have both sinned in different ways, but God doesn't cast out love even when it comes in unexpected packages." A tear slipped down her father's lined cheek. "Wise, daughter, better than me." "I've brought someone for you to meet," Willow said. "Two someones, actually. My husband, Sheriff Zachary Novak, and my son, your grandson, Matthew." Her father's eyes widened in surprise. "Married?" "Yes, since January. Zach has been everything a husband should be: kind, supportive, and loving, and he has claimed Matthew as his own, giving him his name and his protection." "Good man," Thomas nodded weakly. "Bring them." Willow went to the door and called for Zach, who came upstairs carrying Matthew. When they entered the room, her father's gaze fixed on the baby, another tear escaping. "My grandson," he whispered. Willow placed Matthew in her father's good arm, supporting the baby's weight as her father examined his tiny features. "He has the Vaughan eyes," Thomas noted with satisfaction. "Strong boy." "He is," Willow agreed, "just like his grandfather." Thomas looked up at Zach, who stood respectfully at the foot of the bed. "You care for them with my life, sir," Zach replied solemnly. "Your daughter and grandson are my greatest blessings." Thomas nodded, apparently satisfied. "Good family. Important." His strength seemed to be fading, his speech becoming more difficult. "Bible. There." Martha, who had returned to the room, brought the family Bible to his side. With his good hand, Thomas laboriously opened it to the family register where births, marriages, and deaths were recorded. The last entry was Willow's banishment, recorded in his precise handwriting. Willow Ann Vaughan, cast out for fornication, October 12, 1876. "Pen," he requested, and Martha placed one in his hand. With tremendous effort, Thomas drew a line through those words. Beneath them, in shaky but legible script, he wrote, "Willow Ann Vaughan Novak, restored to family July 18, 1877. Matthew Zachary Novak, grandson, born January 26, 1877. When he finished, he closed the Bible with finality. "Done," he said simply. "Right. Now." That night, as Willow and Zach prepared for bed in her childhood room, she reflected on the day's events. "I never thought I'd see him admit he was wrong," she marveled. "Father has always been so certain of his righteousness." "Facing death has a way of clarifying what truly matters," Zach observed, pulling her close. "I'm glad you had this chance for reconciliation." "As am I," Willow agreed, resting her head against his chest. "It feels as though a weight I didn't know I was carrying has been lifted." Thomas Vaughan lingered for 3 more days, drifting in and out of consciousness, but always brightening when Willow brought Matthew to see him. On the 3rd night, he passed peacefully in his sleep, his hand in Martha's, his family gathered around him. The funeral was attended by the entire congregation of Sacred Light, many of whom were seeing Willow for the first time since her banishment. Pastor Wilson, who had replaced Thomas as elder, spoke of forgiveness and reconciliation, pointedly noting that Elder Vaughan's last act had been to restore his daughter to the family. After the burial, as the mourners gathered at the Vaughan home, Pastor Wilson approached Willow and Zach. "Your father spoke to me before he passed," he said. "He asked me to tell the congregation that he had been mistaken in his harshness toward you. It takes a great man to admit such error, especially one who has spent his life in judgment of others." "Thank you for telling me," Willow said, deeply moved. "You and your family would be welcome to return to Clifton Hill," Pastor Wilson continued. "The congregation would benefit from your example of grace." Willow glanced at Zach, who smiled encouragingly. "That's very kind," she replied, "but our home is in Silveridge now. Zach's work is there, and we've built a life we love." "I understand," Pastor Wilson nodded, "but know that you have a place here should you ever wish to visit or return." Later, as they prepared to leave for the journey back to Silveridge, Martha embraced Willow tightly. "I wish you could stay longer," she said, reluctant to let go. "We'll come back," Willow promised. "And you must visit us in Silveridge, you and the girls. You should see where your grandson is growing up." "I would like that," Martha agreed. Now that your father is gone, I find myself thinking of what I might like to do with whatever years remain to me. Perhaps a change of scenery would be good for all of us." Willow looked at her mother in surprise. "Are you considering leaving Clifton Hill?" "I'm considering many things," Martha said with a small smile. Your father's passing has reminded me that life is short, and I've spent much of mine in the shadow of his convictions. Perhaps it's time to discover my own. The stagecoach ride back to Silveridge was filled with quiet conversation as Willow and Zach discussed the events of their visit and the possibilities it had opened up. Matthew slept peacefully between them, unaware of the healing his small existence had brought about. "Would you mind," Willow asked as they approached Silveridge, "if my mother and sisters came to live nearby?" "Mind," Zach repeated. "I'd welcome it. Family is important, and Matthew should know his grandmother and aunts. Besides, I've grown rather fond of your mother these past few days. She has a quiet strength that reminds me of you." Willow leaned against his shoulder, overcome with gratitude for this man who had saved her in so many ways. "I love you, Zachary Novak." "And I love you, Willow Novak," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You and our son are the greatest blessings of my life." As the stagecoach rolled into Silveridge, Willow looked out at the town that had become her home. The buildings along Main Street were familiar and welcoming, from Alina's boarding house to the Petersons' home to the sheriff's office where Zach maintained the peace. Their own small house waited on the edge of town, a haven they had created together. Life had taken her on an unexpected journey, from the sheltered daughter of a religious leader to an unwed mother cast out in disgrace, and finally to a beloved wife and mother with a place in the community. Through it all, she had learned that love, not judgment, was the true measure of faith. "God doesn't cast out love," Zach had told her that first night, and now she understood the profound truth of those words. Love had found her when she was at her lowest, had lifted her up, and had given her a new family when her old one had failed her. And now, that circle of love had expanded to include reconciliation with her birth family as well. As they stepped down from the stagecoach, Deputy Miller approached with a warm welcome and news of the town's happenings during their absence. Alina rushed over from the boarding house to embrace them and coo over Matthew. Sarah Peterson appeared with her 3 children in tow, the oldest asking eagerly if Matthew was big enough to play yet. Surrounded by these good people who had accepted her without question, Willow felt a sense of belonging she had never known in Clifton Hill. This was home not because of geography or birth, but because of the bonds of love and acceptance that held them all together. That night, after Matthew had been fed and settled in his cradle, Willow sat on the porch with Zach, watching as fireflies danced in the gathering dusk. "I've been thinking," Zach said, his arm around her shoulders. "The house is getting a bit small for us." "Is it?" Willow asked, looking up at him curiously. "It seems just right to me." "Well, it's perfect for the 3 of us," he agreed. "But if your mother and sisters come to visit or even to stay, we'll need more room. And—" He paused, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "If our family continues to grow, as I hope it will, we'll need space for that too." "Are you saying you want more children?" Willow asked, her heart quickening at the thought. She had assumed Matthew would be their only child, had never dared hope for more. "I'm saying I want everything with you, Willow," Zach replied, turning to face her fully. "A house full of children, if you're willing. A lifetime of building something beautiful together. I know Matthew came to us in an unexpected way, but he's shown me how much I love being a father. I'd like to experience that again with children we create together." Tears of joy filled Willow's eyes. "I want that too," she whispered. "More than I can say." Zach pulled her close, his kiss tender and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, he gestured toward the open land beyond their small house. "I've been talking with Mr. Harrison about that parcel of land adjacent to ours. With your approval, I'd like to purchase it and build us a proper home. Something with enough bedrooms for all the Novaks we might someday be, and guest rooms for your mother and sisters whenever they visit." "It sounds perfect," Willow agreed, imagining the home they would build together, not just the physical structure, but the life within its walls. A life filled with love, acceptance, and the family they were creating one day at a time. As if on cue, Matthew's cry sounded from inside the house. Willow rose to tend to him, Zach following close behind. Together they soothed their son back to sleep, their movements already a well-practiced dance of partnership and shared responsibility. Standing over the cradle, watching the peaceful rise and fall of Matthew's chest, Willow felt a completeness she had once thought forever beyond her reach. From the darkest moment of her life, pregnant, alone, and rejected, had come this beautiful future, this family, this love. "God doesn't cast out love," she whispered, echoing Zach's words from that stormy night that had changed everything. "He only multiplies it." Zach's arm tightened around her waist. "Amen to that, Mrs. Novak. Amen to that." And as the prairie wind sang its ancient lullaby around their small house, soon to be replaced by something larger, but no more precious, Willow Novak knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the people she was meant to love. The journey had been difficult, the pain real, but the destination was worth every step that had brought her here, to this moment of perfect peace.